CEO's luxury car breaks down, ridicules mechanic's appearance. At the Industry Innovation Awards, he's stunned to see who's receiving the top honor. Hello, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. He was used to power, wealth, and respect. Nothing in Michael's world ever challenged him, until that day. As he sped down the street in his luxury car, his mind was focused on sealing a multi-million-dollar deal. But fate had other plans. When his car suddenly broke down in a rundown neighborhood, Michael's life collided with someone he never expected. A humble mechanic, worn down by life but carrying a presence that couldn't be ignored. The tension between them was instant. Michael, with his arrogance and status, and the mechanic with his quiet strength and resilience. What happened next was supposed to be just a quick fix, an inconvenience to be forgotten. But the words the mechanic left him with, they would haunt Michael, echoing in his mind long after the car was repaired. Little did he know, this brief encounter would unravel a series of events that would shake the very foundation of everything he thought he knew. Michael was about to discover that sometimes, the most ordinary moments hide the most extraordinary truths. Now at the biggest night of his career, as the spotlight falls on him, Michael is about to face the truth, and nothing could prepare him for what he's about to find out. The sun had barely peeked over the Manhattan skyline when Michael Thornton's alarm blared through his penthouse suite. His eyes snapped open, already filled with the intense focus that had propelled him to the top of New York's cutthroat business world. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day he'd cement his legacy. As he knotted his $500 Hermes tie, Michael's reflection stared back at him. Sharp blue eyes, salt and pepper hair meticulously styled, not a wrinkle in sight on his tailored Tom Ford suit. At 45, he was the very picture of success, the kind of man whose presence alone could make or break million-dollar deals. "Sarah, have my calls been rerouted to the car?" He barked into his phone, striding towards the elevator. His assistant's voice crackled back, confirming everything was set for his 9 a.m. meeting. The Henderson contract, a $50 million deal that would revolutionize clean energy distribution across the East Coast. Michael allowed himself a small smirk. By lunch, he'd be the talk of Wall Street yet again. The valet had his Mercedes-AMG GT 63 SE Performance waiting, its sleek silver body gleaming in the early morning light. Michael slid into the driver's seat, inhaling the scent of fine leather. As he merged into the sparse traffic, his mind raced through profit projections and negotiation tactics. That's when it happened. A sputtering cough from the engine, then silence. The car rolled to a stop, dashboard lights flashing angrily. Michael's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "No, no, no," he muttered, jabbing frantically at the ignition. Nothing. He glanced at his watch. 8:15 a.m. Panic clawed at his throat as he realized where he was. The outskirts of Brooklyn, a world away from the polished boardrooms of Manhattan. Graffiti-covered walls and crumbling buildings loomed around him. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to him. Not today. With trembling fingers, he Googled the nearest mechanic. Sammy's Auto Repair popped up just 2 blocks away. Michael's lip curled in distaste, but he had no choice. He called, barking orders for immediate assistance. 20 minutes later, a beat-up tow truck rumbled to a stop beside him. The driver who emerged made Michael recoil instinctively. The man, if you could call him that under all that grime, was short, stocky, with arms covered in grease stains and tattoos. His weathered face was partially hidden beneath a scraggly beard, and a worn Yankees cap sat askew on his head. "You, Thornton?" The mechanic grunted, wiping his hands on oil-stained coveralls. Michael's nostrils flared. "That's Mr. Thornton to you," he snapped. "I don't have time for pleasantries. Fix it now." The mechanic, his name tag read Sam, merely raised an eyebrow and popped the hood. Michael paced, checking his watch obsessively. 8:45 a.m. The Henderson deal slipping through his fingers with every passing second. "Listen here," Michael snarled, looming over Sam. "Do you have any idea who I am? What's at stake? I doubt someone like you could even comprehend the numbers I'm dealing with." Sam didn't even look up, his calloused hands moving methodically through the engine. The lack of reaction only fueled Michael's rising anger. I mean, look at you, Michael continued, gesturing wildly. Probably never seen the inside of a boardroom, have you? Bet you think a quarter means 25 cents, not 25 million. God, I can smell the failure on you. Still, Sam said nothing, his face a mask of concentration. Michael felt a vein throbbing in his temple, rage and panic intertwining. You're nothing but a grease monkey, he spat. A nobody. Probably dropped out of high school, knocked up some girl, and now you're stuck here playing with cars because it's all your simple mind can handle. It's people like you that... It's fixed. Sam's quiet voice cut through Michael's tirade like a knife. Your car, it's fixed. Sam wiped his hands on a rag, his brown eyes meeting Michael's for the first time. There was something in that gaze, a depth, a quiet strength, that made Michael take an involuntary step back. How much? Michael fumbled for his wallet, suddenly eager to be gone. Sam named a price that was a fraction of what Michael had expected. As he counted out the bills, Michael felt an inexplicable urge to say something, to apologize maybe. But his pride wouldn't let him. Just as he was about to climb back into his car, Sam spoke again. His voice was low, tinged with an emotion Michael couldn't quite place. Sometimes the past comes back to teach us what we ignored in the present. Michael froze, one foot in the car. He turned, a chill racing down his spine despite the warm June morning. What did you say? But Sam was already walking away, his hunched figure disappearing into the dingy garage. Michael stood there, keys in hand, feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Those words, why did they feel so haunting? So personal. Shaking his head, he slammed the car door and peeled away from the curb. He had a meeting to get to, a deal to close. He couldn't let some cryptic comment from a nobody mechanic throw him off his game. Yet as he sped towards Manhattan, the image of Sam's eyes, filled with a wisdom that seemed to see right through him, refused to fade from Michael's mind. For the first time in years, a tendril of doubt crept into his heart. Little did Michael know, this chance encounter was about to unravel everything he thought he knew about success, family, and the price of ambition. The wheels of fate had been set in motion, and nothing would ever be the same again. Michael blinked, momentarily stunned. What? Michael's sleek Mercedes cut through Manhattan traffic like a shark through water, but the usual thrill of power was absent. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, mind replaying the encounter with Sam on an endless loop. Sometimes the past comes back to teach us what we ignored in the present. The words echoed, drowning out the Bloomberg radio update he'd habitually tuned to. Michael shook his head, trying to focus on the Henderson deal. Billions were at stake. He couldn't afford distractions. Yet as he strode into the gleaming skyscraper housing Thornton Enterprises, Sam's weathered face kept superimposing itself over the polished executives, nodding deferentially as he passed. The boardroom, usually his arena of triumph, felt suffocating. Mr. Thornton, Henderson's voice cut through the fog. Your thoughts on the proposed timeline? Michael blinked, realizing he'd completely zoned out. He cleared his throat, scrambling to regain control. The timeline is aggressive but achievable. We'll need to... As he spoke, projecting confidence he no longer felt, Michael's mind drifted to a memory he'd long buried. A small boy with tousled hair, crying as he was led away by stern-faced adults. His own younger self, watching from behind his mother's legs, confused and frightened. Which brings us to the projected ROI, Michael finished, not entirely sure what he'd been saying. To his relief, Henderson was nodding approvingly. Excellent, Michael. Let's break for lunch and reconvene to hash out the details. As the room emptied, Michael slumped in his chair, loosening his tie. What was happening to him? He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over his mother's contact. When was the last time he'd even spoken to her? Before he could second-guess himself, he pressed call. Michael? His mother's voice was thick with surprise. Is everything all right? Mom, He paused, uncertain how to continue. Do you remember, did I ever have a what, dear? There was a new tension in her tone. Michael swallowed hard. Never mind, I just wanted to check in. The conversation that followed was stilted, filled with awkward pauses. As he hung up, Michael felt more unsettled than ever. Across town, in a modest apartment in Queens, Sam carefully hung up his grease-stained coveralls. His movements were deliberate, almost ritual-like. He walked to a small desk in the corner, opening the drawer to reveal a faded photograph. Two young boys grinned at the camera, arms slung around each other's shoulders. Behind them stood a couple, the woman's smile strained, the man's eyes cold despite the sunny backdrop. Sam's finger traced the outline of the smaller boy's face, his own face years ago before life had carved its lessons into his skin. Then he moved to the other boy, the one with the mischievous grin and bright blue eyes. "Oh, Mikey," Sam whispered, a lifetime of pain in those two words. "What happened to us?" He replaced the photo carefully as if it might crumble at any moment. Walking to his small kitchen, Sam began preparing a simple dinner, his movements automatic as his mind wandered. He thought of the arrogant man in the expensive car, spewing insults without a second thought. He thought of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, of a world so far removed from his own that it might as well be another planet. And yet, Sam closed his eyes, remembering the flash of vulnerability he'd seen in Michael's eyes just before he'd driven away. It was the same look he'd seen decades ago, watching his brother disappear behind the tinted windows of their parents' car. As night fell over New York City, two men on opposite sides of the wealth divide grappled with ghosts from their shared past. Neither fully understood the forces drawing them back together, or the storm of revelations waiting on the horizon. In his penthouse, Michael stared unseeing at the glittering skyline, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. In Queens, Sam sat on his fire escape, the city's constant hum a backdrop to his turbulent thoughts. Both men felt the weight of unspoken truths, of paths diverged and choices made. As sleep finally claimed them, their dreams were haunted by fragments of a childhood lost, and the terrifying possibility of a reckoning long overdue. The stage was set. The past and present were about to collide in ways neither Michael nor Sam could have imagined, and the lessons waiting to be learned would shake the very foundations of their carefully constructed worlds. The next morning dawned gray and oppressive, mirroring Michael's mood as he paced his penthouse. The Henderson deal was closed, another notch in his belt of corporate conquests, but the victory felt hollow. Sam's words and that nagging memory refused to let him rest. With a sudden burst of determination, Michael grabbed his keys. He needed answers, and there was only one person who could provide them. An hour later, he stood before a stately brownstone in the Upper East Side, hesitating before pressing the doorbell. The house hadn't changed in 20 years, a monument to old money and carefully guarded secrets. "Michael?" His mother's surprise was evident as she opened the door. Eleanor Thornton, once the toast of New York society, now looked frail and diminished. Her perfectly coiffed hair couldn't hide the tremor in her hands as she ushered him inside. The living room was a museum to better days, crystal decanters, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and the faint smell of decay beneath expensive perfume. Michael perched uncomfortably on the edge of an antique settee, while Eleanor lowered herself into her favorite armchair. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" she asked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Michael took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to know about my brother." The change was instant. Eleanor's face hardened, her eyes becoming chips of ice. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said flatly. "Don't lie to me." Michael's voice rose, years of suppressed emotion bubbling to the surface. "I remember him. I remember the day he was taken away. What happened? Where is he?" Eleanor's hands shook as she reached for her ever-present gin and tonic. "It was for the best," she whispered, not meeting his eyes. "Your father, he said we couldn't risk the scandal. The boy wasn't right for our family." Michael felt sick. "What does that even mean? He was just a child." "You don't understand," Eleanor snapped, a flash of the formidable woman she'd once been breaking through. "We had a legacy to protect. Samuel, he was different. Difficult. Your father said he'd ruin everything we'd built." "Samuel," Michael repeated, the name feeling both foreign and achingly familiar on his tongue. "What happened to him?" Eleanor took a long sip of her drink. We sent him away. To a home for boys. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we could figure things out. But then your father's business took off, and you were doing so well in school." She trailed off, lost in rationalization. Michael stood abruptly, unable to bear the weight of her excuses. "You abandoned him," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your own son, my brother. How could you? We did what we had to," Eleanor cried, tears streaking her carefully applied makeup. "To give you the life you deserved, to become the man you are today." Michael stared at her, seeing for the first time the hollowness behind the facade of wealth and propriety. "And what kind of man is that, Mom? One who throws away his family? Who values money over flesh and blood?" He strode to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "I want his full name, the name of the home, everything you know." Eleanor's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Samuel James Thornton," she whispered. "The home was called St. Christopher's. It closed down years ago." Without another word, Michael left, the door slamming behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Across the city, in his small apartment, Sam sat at his desk, staring at the invitation that had arrived that morning. The Industry Innovation Awards, a gala celebrating the brightest minds in technology and engineering. And there, in bold letters, his name, Samuel Cooper, nominee for the Breakthrough Achievement in Automotive Design. Sam traced the embossed lettering, a bittersweet smile playing on his lips. All those nights of study, the countless rejections, the patents finally recognized. It had all led to this moment, a chance to step into the world he'd been cast out of so long ago. He glanced at the faded photograph, at the little boy with the bright blue eyes who had once been his whole world. "I did it, Mikey," he whispered. "I made something of myself, just like I promised." As the day faded into evening, two brothers, separated by fate and cruel choices, stood at the precipice of a truth that would shatter everything they thought they knew. The weight of secrets, carried for so long, was about to come crashing down. In his luxurious condo, Michael furiously typed on his laptop, searching for any trace of St. Christopher's home for boys and the brother he'd lost. In Queens, Sam carefully pressed his one good suit, preparing to face a world that had once deemed him unworthy. Neither knew that their paths were about to collide in a way that would test the very limits of forgiveness, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The stage was set for a reckoning 2 decades in the making, and as night fell over New York City, the winds of change whispered of secrets soon to be revealed and lives forever altered. The Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom glittered with New York's elite. Michael Thornton moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and flashing his trademark smile, but his eyes constantly scanned the room, searching for... what? He wasn't even sure anymore. "Michael, there you are." Jessica Chen, his VP of Marketing, appeared at his elbow. "The Henderson people can't stop singing your praises. That deal was a masterstroke." He nodded absently, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing waiter. "Thanks, Jess. Listen, have you heard anything about the Innovation Awards tonight?" Jessica's eyebrows rose. "Since when are you interested in the engineering side?" "But yes, actually. There's quite a buzz about one of the nominees. Some genius who's revolutionized electric vehicle batteries. Started as a mechanic, if you can believe it. Real rags to riches story." Michael's champagne froze halfway to his lips. "A mechanic?" he asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. "What's his name?" "Cooper, I think. Samuel Cooper. Why? Do you know him?" The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Michael gripped the edge of a nearby table, his mind reeling. It couldn't be. And yet... "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed through the ballroom. "Please take your seats. The Industry Innovation Awards are about to begin." Michael found himself ushered to a table near the front, his body moving on autopilot while his thoughts raced. He barely registered the first few awards, his eyes fixed on the stage, waiting. "And now, for our final and most prestigious award of the evening, the Breakthrough Achievement in Automotive Design." The spotlight swung to illuminate a man rising from a table across the room. Michael's breath caught in his throat. Even from a distance, he recognized the set of those shoulders, the careful way he moved. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Samuel Cooper." The applause was thunderous, but Michael heard nothing. He watched, transfixed, as Sam, no longer in grease-stained coveralls but a well-fitted suit, made his way to the podium. "Thank you." Sam's voice, amplified by the microphone, filled the room. "I stand before you tonight not just as an engineer, but as living proof that innovation can come from the most unexpected places." As Sam spoke about his journey from mechanic to inventor, Michael felt the ground shift beneath him. This accomplished, articulate man was the same person he had sneered at and belittled, the same brother he had forgotten. "And so I dedicate this award to all those who've been told they don't belong," Sam concluded, his eyes sweeping the crowd. For a heart-stopping moment, they seemed to lock with Michael's. "Never let anyone else define your worth." The ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. Michael rose mechanically with the rest, his mind in chaos. How had he not seen it? The eyes, the quiet strength, the cryptic words that had haunted him for days. It had been Sam all along. As the crowd began to disperse, Michael pushed his way towards the stage, driven by an urgent need to what? Apologize? Explain? He didn't know. But before he could reach Sam, a group of reporters swarmed around the award winner, peppering him with questions. Michael hung back, watching as Sam handled the press with grace and humor. This was a far cry from the grease monkey he had so cruelly dismissed. Shame burned in his chest, mingling with a desperate longing he couldn't quite name. Finally, as the last of the reporters drifted away, Michael saw his chance. He stepped forward, heart pounding. "Mr. Cooper?" he called, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam turned, his expression unreadable as he recognized Michael. For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of their shared past, of choices made and paths diverged, hung heavy between them. "Congratulations on your award," Michael finally managed, the words feeling woefully inadequate. Sam nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton," he replied, emphasizing the formal address. "I hope you found the ceremony educational." Before Michael could respond, Sam turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the emptying ballroom. The trophy in Sam's hand caught the light, a glittering reminder of all that Michael had failed to see. As he made his way back to his penthouse that night, Michael's world had been irrevocably altered. The brother he had lost, the man he had scorned, was now a celebrated innovator, and Michael, for all his wealth and power, had never felt more lost. Little did he know, this revelation was only the beginning. The true test of brotherhood, forgiveness, and redemption lay ahead, waiting to unfold in ways neither Michael nor Sam could have imagined. The morning after the awards ceremony, Michael sat in his home office, surrounded by the trappings of his success, yet feeling utterly adrift. The events of the previous night played on a loop in his mind. Sam on stage, confident and accomplished, a far cry from the image Michael had constructed of his long-lost brother. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd tracked down in the early hours of the morning. "St. Christopher's Home for Boys, archived records," a bored voice answered. "Yes, I'm looking for information on a former resident, Samuel James Thornton. He would have been there in the late 90s. There was a pause, the sound of typing. "I'm sorry, sir, but those records are confidential. Unless your immediate family—" "I'm his brother," Michael interrupted, his voice cracking. "Please, I need to know what happened to him." Whether it was the desperation in his tone or some stroke of luck, the clerk hesitated, then sighed. "Give me a moment." The next half hour was a blur of painful revelations. Sam's arrival at the home, confused and angry. Reports of a bright but troubled child, struggling to understand why his family had abandoned him. Michael's throat tightened as he listened to the story of his brother's life, a life he should have been part of. "There's a note here," the clerk said, "about a name change when he aged out of the system. He legally became Samuel Cooper." Michael thanked the clerk numbly, ending the call. He sat in silence for a long moment, then stood with sudden determination. He needed to see Sam, to explain, to try and bridge the chasm between them. Across the city, in his modest apartment, Sam was experiencing his own turmoil. The photo of the two young brothers lay on his kitchen table, a silent witness to the past he'd tried so hard to leave behind. A knock at the door startled him. Sam opened it to find a courier holding a large envelope. "Delivery for Samuel Cooper," the man said, handing over the package. Inside, Sam found a stack of documents, copies of his childhood records from St. Christopher's along with a handwritten note. "Sam, I know this doesn't begin to make up for the past, but I hope it might be a start. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. There's so much I need to say." "Michael." Sam sank into a chair, emotions warring within him. The anger and hurt he'd carried for so long clashed with a desperate longing for the brother he'd lost. As the day wore on, both men grappled with the weight of their shared history. Michael paced his penthouse, rehearsing apologies that felt woefully inadequate. Sam sat in his workshop, tinkering with an engine part, trying to lose himself in the familiar task. Finally, as evening fell, Sam made a decision. He picked up his phone and sent a text to the number Michael had included with the documents. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the garage where we first met." In his luxurious apartment, Michael's phone buzzed. He read the message, relief and anxiety flooding through him in equal measure. This was his chance, perhaps his only chance, to make things right. As night settled over New York, two brothers prepared for a confrontation decades in the making. The garage that had once been the scene of casual cruelty would now serve as the backdrop for a reckoning neither was fully prepared to face. Michael stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the city he'd conquered, yet feeling more uncertain than he had in years. In Queens, Sam closed his eyes, the faces of his younger self and his brother swimming before him. The stage was set for a reunion that would test the limits of forgiveness, the strength of blood ties and the power of redemption. As both men drifted into uneasy sleep, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future hung heavy in the air. Tomorrow would bring a conversation that could heal old wounds or tear them open anew. The truth, so long buried, was finally ready to come to light. The garage looked smaller than Michael remembered, its weathered sign creaking in the afternoon breeze. He parked his Mercedes across the street, heart pounding as he watched Sam's beaten-up truck pull in. Sam emerged, wiping his hands on a rag, a habit so familiar it made Michael's chest ache. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved.
"Sam, Michael began, but Sam held up a hand.
"Not here," he said quietly. "Follow me." Puzzled, Michael trailed behind as Sam led him through the garage to a small office in the back. The walls were covered in diagrams and blueprints, a stark contrast to the oily tools outside. Sam gestured for Michael to sit, then leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Before you say anything," he said, his voice steady, "there's something you need to know." Michael nodded, bracing himself. "I've always known who you were," Sam continued, his words dropping like stones in the quiet room. "From the moment you pulled up in that fancy car, cussing about being late for your meeting." Michael's jaw dropped. "But how? Why didn't you say anything?" Sam's laugh was hollow. "What was I supposed to say? Hey, remember me? The brother you forgot about for 20 years? He shook his head. "I needed to see who you'd become. The man you are when you think no one's watching." The weight of Sam's words hit Michael like a physical blow. Every insult, every sneering comment he'd made that day came rushing back, magnified by the knowledge that it hadn't been a stranger he was belittling, but his own flesh and blood. "God, Sam, I'm so sorry," Michael whispered, shame burning in his throat. "If I had known..." "You would have what?" Sam interrupted, a hint of steel in his voice. "Treated me better because I was family? That's the problem, Michael. You shouldn't need a reason to treat people with basic decency." Michael fell silent, the truth of Sam's words sinking in. Sam sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "I didn't tell you this to make you feel worse. I told you because I need you to understand something." He paused, meeting Michael's eyes. "I forgive you." Michael blinked, sure he had misheard. "You... what?" "I forgive you," Sam repeated. "Not just for that day at the garage, but for all of it. For not looking for me, for forgetting me. I forgive you." Tears welled in Michael's eyes. "How?" he choked out. "How can you possibly forgive me after everything?" Sam's expression softened. "Because holding on to that anger was destroying me. And because..." He hesitated, then continued. "Because I saw something in your eyes that day. A flicker of the brother I remembered. I thought maybe, just maybe, there was hope for us. Michael stood, overwhelmed by emotion. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said, voice thick. Maybe not, Sam agreed, but you have it. The question is, what are you going to do with it? As the weight of Sam's words settled over them, the small office seemed to hold its breath. Two brothers, separated by decades of pain and misunderstanding, stood on the precipice of a new beginning. Michael took a shaky breath. I want to make things right, he said. I know I can never undo the past, but if you'll let me, I want to be part of your life going forward, to be the brother I should have been all along. Sam nodded slowly. It won't be easy, he warned. We have a lot of lost time to make up for. I know, Michael replied, but I'm willing to try if you are. For the first time since they'd reunited, a genuine smile crossed Sam's face. Then I guess we have a lot to talk about, little brother. As they settled in for a long overdue conversation, neither Michael nor Sam could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead. The road to reconciliation would be fraught with obstacles, old wounds reopening and new ones forming. But in that moment, in a small garage office in Brooklyn, a spark of hope ignited. Two brothers, once lost to each other, had taken the first tentative steps towards healing. The story of Michael and Sam was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The Industry Innovation Awards Gala was in full swing, the cream of New York's tech and business world mingling in the opulent ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Michael Thornton stood near the back, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. His eyes kept darting to the entrance, searching for a familiar face. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers. Please take your seats, we're about to begin the main event of the evening. As the crowd settled, Michael spotted Sam slipping in through a side door. Their eyes met across the room and Sam gave a small nod. This was it, the moment they'd been working towards for months. The first few awards passed in a blur. Michael barely registered the polite applause, his mind racing through all the possibilities of what was about to unfold. Finally, the MC returned to the stage, his voice commanding attention. And now for our most prestigious honor of the night, the Lifetime Achievement Award for Revolutionary Contributions to Automotive Engineering. A hush fell over the room. This was the award everyone had been speculating about for weeks. This year's recipient has a truly remarkable story, the MC continued. From humble beginnings as a mechanic in Brooklyn to becoming one of the most innovative minds in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Samuel Cooper. The applause was thunderous. Michael watched, heart swelling with pride as Sam made his way to the podium. Gone was the grease-stained mechanic of their first meeting. In his place stood a man of quiet confidence, his eyes bright with emotion. Sam cleared his throat, adjusting the microphone. Thank you, he began, his voice steady. This award is an incredible honor, but if you'll indulge me, I'd like to share a story that goes beyond engineering and innovation. The room fell silent, hanging on his every word. 25 years ago, I was a scared kid in a group home, convinced I'd been forgotten by the world. Sam continued. I threw myself into books, into understanding how things worked, because machines made sense when nothing else did. Michael felt tears pricking at his eyes, the weight of those lost years heavy on his heart. What I didn't know then, Sam went on, was that sometimes life has a way of coming full circle. A few months ago, I reconnected with someone I thought I'd lost forever, my brother. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Michael saw heads turning, searching for him in the audience. Michael, Sam said, his eyes finding his brothers in the crowd. Would you join me up here? On shaky legs, Michael made his way to the stage. The spotlight felt blinding, but Sam's steady presence anchored him. My brother and I were separated by circumstances beyond our control, Sam explained to the rapt audience. We've spent the past months rebuilding what was broken, learning to be family again. It hasn't been easy, but it's taught me something profound about innovation. He turned to Michael, his eyes shining. True innovation isn't just about creating new technology. It's about having the courage to rebuild what's broken, to see potential where others see only wreckage. Michael couldn't hold back any longer. In front of hundreds of industry elites, he pulled Sam into a tight embrace. The room erupted in applause, many wiping away tears of their own. As they separated, Sam spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. This award belongs not just to me, but to everyone who's ever had the courage to start over, to forgive, to see the best in others even when it's hard. He held the trophy between them, a symbol of not just professional achievement but of a brotherhood reforged. Thank you, Sam concluded, for reminding me that the greatest innovations often happen in the human heart. As they left the stage together, the applause still ringing in their ears, Michael and Sam knew that this was more than just a career triumph. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one they would write together. The evening continued, but for the Thornton brothers, the real celebration was just beginning. They had faced their past, confronted their mistakes, and emerged stronger. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but they would face them as they always should have, side by side. In that moment, surrounded by the glitz and glamour of New York's elite, two brothers who had once been strangers found home in each other's company. And that, they both knew, was the greatest award of all. 6 months after the Industry Innovation Awards, a crisp autumn breeze rustled through Central Park. On a bench overlooking the lake sat two men, their resemblance unmistakable despite their different styles of dress. Michael Thornton, his designer suit jacket draped casually over the back of the bench, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Beside him, Sam Cooper sat back, relaxed in jeans and a worn leather jacket. "I still can't believe you turned down that merger offer," Michael said, shaking his head in disbelief. Sam shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Some things are more important than money, little brother. I built that company from the ground up. It's not just about profit margins for me." Michael nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You know, a year ago I wouldn't have gotten that, but now—" He trailed off, looking out over the water. "Now?" Sam prompted gently. "Now I see there's more to life than just the next big deal," Michael finished. "You've taught me that, Sam, you and this whole journey we've been on." Sam reached out, squeezing his brother's shoulder. "We've both learned a lot, I think." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching a family of ducks glide across the lake. The peace between them felt hard-won but precious. "You know," Michael said suddenly, "I've been thinking about what you said at the awards, about innovation happening in the heart." Sam turned to him, eyebrow raised in curiosity. "I want to start a foundation," Michael continued, his voice gaining enthusiasm. "Something to help kids in the system like you were, to give them opportunities, mentorship, maybe even scholarships for engineering programs." Sam's eyes widened. "Michael, that's incredible. I was hoping you might want to be involved," Michael added, a hint of nervousness creeping into his tone. "Your experience, your story, it could really inspire these kids." Sam was quiet for a long moment, and Michael felt his heart rate pick up. Had he overstepped? Then Sam broke into a wide grin. "I'd be honored," he said simply. The relief and joy on Michael's face was palpable. "Really, you mean it?" "Of course," Sam nodded. "It's about time we did something good with the Thornton name, don't you think?" Michael laughed, the sound free and unburdened in a way it hadn't been in years. "God, when did you become the wise one?" "Always was," Sam retorted with a wink. "You were just too busy being a big shot to notice." As they chuckled together, a passerby might have mistaken them for lifelong friends rather than brothers still navigating the waters of reconciliation. The ease between them was new, but growing stronger every day. "You know," Sam said thoughtfully, "forgiveness isn't just a one-time thing, it's a choice we make every day." Michael nodded solemnly. "I'm grateful for that choice, Sam, more than you know." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the Thornton brothers stood. They had dinner plans, a weekly tradition they'd started, alternating between five-star restaurants and Sam's favorite greasy spoons. Walking side by side, their steps in sync, Michael and Sam represented a story of redemption, of bonds stronger than time or circumstance. They were living proof that it's never too late to heal old wounds, to forge new paths, to become the people and the family they were always meant to be. As they left the park, their laughter drifting back on the evening breeze, one thing was clear. The greatest innovation in their lives hadn't come from a laboratory or a boardroom. It had come from the simple, powerful act of forgiveness. And that, they both knew, was worth more than any award or accolade. It was the foundation of their future, as brothers, as partners, and as men committed to making a difference in the world.
Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.